She dragged me by the arm in a grocery store and screamed, "You're a burden and a joke." But when I secretly filmed it and posted it online, I didn't just expose her. I uncovered a decades-old lie, a lost child, and a sister I thought was dead. And when the truth came out, she stood frozen, exposed before the world, stunned, shattered, and finally powerless. The bananas tumbled from my trembling hands, scattering across the slick grocery store tiles like yellow shame. Customers turned, their glances sharp with pity, or was it judgment? My daughter-in-law, Karina, yanked my wrist so hard I nearly fell over. "Pick it up," she hissed. "I told you not to touch anything unless I say so." Her voice, sharp and venom-laced, echoed across the checkout line. The young cashier froze, unsure whether to bag or pretend not to notice. I swallowed the lump in my throat and bent down, the pain in my knees flaring like fire, but I did it anyway, because that's what I had learned to do after 6 years of silent endurance. "Stop embarrassing me. You're a burden and a joke." Karina shouted louder, now fully performing for the grocery store audience as if I were her unruly pet. I felt every eye in the store slice into me, and I wished for the floor to split open and swallow me whole. But instead of crying, I did something else. I slowly, quietly, shifted my purse, clicked the button beneath the hidden flap, and activated the old phone I'd hidden 2 weeks ago, just for a moment like this. I had practiced the angle. Practiced the timing. Because I knew this humiliation wouldn't be the last, but I wanted it to be the one she'd regret. Karina stormed ahead to the car, leaving me to carry the groceries. I held the bags with shaking fingers, barely able to see through the well of tears in my eyes. That night, I didn't sleep. I edited. I uploaded. I titled the video, "Elderly Woman Humiliated by Daughter-in-Law in Public, This is Her Life." Within hours, strangers were commenting, "Who is she? Where is this? How can we help?" But as it turns out, this wasn't just a clip. It was a match. A match tossed onto a mountain of dry lies. Because what I didn't know, what Karina didn't know, was that someone else had seen it, someone from her past. And they had a secret about her even darker than what she did to me. A secret that would turn everything upside down. But before we go there, I want to thank you for hearing my story. If you've ever felt silenced, small, or erased, this story is for you. If you've ever been humiliated and told to be grateful for it, stay with me. I'll show you how even a broken old woman can start a fire that lights up the whole town. If this touched something inside you, please like, share, and subscribe my channel. And tell me, where are you from? I want to know how far this story will travel. I hadn't even changed out of my nightgown when the knock came, a slow, deliberate pounding that made my skin crawl. I froze in the kitchen, clutching the chipped coffee mug I always used when Karina left me alone in the mornings. My son, Travis, had already left for work, at least that's what Karina said. Sometimes I wondered if he ever even saw the way she treated me anymore. He used to. He used to step in. Now he just looked away. The knock came again, firmer. I shuffled to the door, heart pounding, unsure if it would be her, Karina, furious about the video, ready to grab my arm again, maybe worse this time. But when I opened it, it wasn't her. It was a woman. Thin, pale, late 30s. Her eyes were hollow, sunken, as if she'd seen years of pain and no one believed her. "Are you Margaret Reed?" she asked, her voice shaking. I hesitated, then nodded. She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped inside without waiting. She handed me her phone and pressed play. On the screen, it was my video. "I saw this on Facebook," she whispered. "I know her. Karina." My spine stiffened. She pointed to the screen. She wasn't always Karina Wallace, was she? I blinked. "What do you mean?" The woman, whose name I later learned was Shelby, sank into my faded armchair and told me a story that unraveled everything I thought I knew. Karina had changed her name 6 years ago after fleeing charges of elder neglect in another state. She'd been a caregiver. She'd worked with seniors. One woman died on her watch, and 2 others accused her of cruelty, burn marks, withheld food, financial exploitation. But the case never went to trial. Records were sealed. Her name disappeared. She married your son and moved here, Shelby whispered, just months after my mother passed under her care. I staggered backward, hand gripping the edge of the counter. Shelby wiped her eyes and added, I always thought she'd pop up somewhere. When I saw your video, I knew it was her. Same voice. Same cruelty. Same fake smile. My mind spun. All those years I had thought I was being paranoid. That I was just old. That I deserved the way she rolled her eyes when I spoke, or the way she'd snap when I left a dish unwashed. But Shelby's story lit something deep inside me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I had been targeted. Again. Karina didn't want a family, she wanted power. She wanted someone vulnerable enough to control. And I had been the perfect prey, the mother-in-law whose son was too busy to look closely, who wore soft sweaters and spoke softly, who had no money of her own and no one left to check on her. Until now. I offered Shelby tea, but she waved it off. There's something else, she said. A woman named Linda in Colorado. She's in a facility now, but she's been asking about Karina for years. I think she might be the missing witness the police never got to talk to. My heart hammered against my ribs. If we can get a statement from Linda, Shelby continued, we can expose Karina not just online, but legally. This can be more than a video, Margaret. This can be justice. For the first time in years, I felt my spine straighten. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. Karina came home that night with a fake smile stretched across her lips, pretending nothing had happened. I watched her peel potatoes, chatting about dinner with a cheery lilt, but I could see the twitch in her eye, the nervous edge. She'd seen the video. She just didn't know what I'd found out since. She didn't know about Shelby. She didn't know about Linda. And she definitely didn't know what I'd found hidden in the bottom drawer of her closet the day before, a stack of forged documents, power of attorney forms with my shaky signature forged in blue ink. She was planning something. Something big. But so was I. And this time, I wasn't going to be silent. I was going to be smart. Calculated. Careful. Because exposing her wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. And if she had forged those forms, I knew what she was after, my house, my name, my last shred of independence. But before she could take it, I'd take something from her. Something she never expected, her mask. And once I ripped it off, she'd have nowhere left to hide. It was almost midnight when Karina finally went to bed, humming as she walked up the stairs, as if she hadn't spent the day pretending she wasn't becoming a national disgrace online. I stayed in my armchair, pretending to nod off, blanket over my knees, lamp dimmed beside me. But once her bedroom door clicked shut, I moved. Slow, silent steps toward the front closet, her designated, don't touch, zone. She always said it was for storage, but I knew better. I had spent years watching her guard it like a dragon guarding gold. That night, I opened it. I pulled down her boots from the top shelf, the heeled ones she never wore but refused to throw away. And inside the left boot, beneath a torn gray sock, was a burner phone. The screen lit up in my hand. No password. No fingerprint. Just dozens of recent calls to someone labeled M. Texts too, long strings of paranoid messages, they're looking for me. Delete everything. He's getting suspicious. But the last message froze my blood. She's going to ruin this for me. Might have to speed things up. She was talking about me. I was the she. And what did speed things up mean? I didn't have time to answer that before the front stairs creaked. I shoved the phone into my apron and stepped back just as Karina's sleepy voice called out, "You still awake?" I steadied my breath, turned on the lamp, and smiled. Just couldn't sleep. Thinking about tomorrow's dinner. Pot roast or salmon? She squinted in the light, her hair a wild halo around her head, her robe tied loosely like a disguise. Whatever. Don't stay up too late. And just like that, she turned back to the darkness. But my mind raced into daylight. The texts were evidence. Real evidence. Whoever M was, they were involved. Maybe helping her. Maybe controlling her. Either way, it meant there was a network behind her cruelty, one I had to unravel if I wanted to stay safe. The next morning, Shelby returned. I showed her the texts, and her eyes widened. "We need to trace that number," she said. "We can't do it ourselves. But I know someone who can." That someone turned out to be a man named Theo, a quiet, sharp-eyed ex-journalist who now worked privately investigating elder abuse cases. He'd seen Karina's video too, and had already been suspicious. "There's a pattern here," he said, laying out names across my dining room table, past aliases, care centers, assisted living facilities, even 2 online fundraisers in which Karina had claimed to be a widow caring for a disabled mother. She'd raised nearly $20,000 from strangers. But no mother existed. It was all lies. And then Theo leaned in. "We found M. It's not a man. It's a woman. Marlene Ortiz. She runs a consulting firm that helps women disappear, for a price." "Disappear?" I asked, throat dry. "New names. New IDs. They scrub digital histories. Help people start over, especially if they're running from criminal charges." Karina had paid her. Theo had traced a wire transfer. Shelby's eyes filled with rage. "She's going to vanish again. That's what she means by speeding things up. She's going to get everything she can from you, and then vanish before you can stop her." The walls of my house felt tighter suddenly. I imagined her fake smiles, her pretend affection when Travis was around. It was all a setup. I was never a mother-in-law. I was a transaction. A tool. A loose end she planned to snip. But this time, she wouldn't get the last move. Theo had a plan. He gave me a tiny button-sized camera disguised as a brooch, and a second phone hidden inside a hollow book. "Don't confront her," he warned. "Just keep gathering. Her world is already cracking. We just have to let it collapse." That night, I cooked dinner, pot roast, as promised. Karina complimented it with that plastic smile while texting under the table. I knew she was planning her exit. But what she didn't know was that I had just opened a door she thought was sealed. And by the time she reached for the doorknob to escape, would be the one standing on the other side, holding her past like a torch. I watched her laugh, Karina, with her flawless teeth and curled blonde hair, charming Travis like she always did. "Your mother and I went shopping today," she said sweetly, slicing into the pot roast I'd cooked with hands that still trembled. "Didn't we, Margaret?" Her eyes glinted at me across the table, challenging me to speak. To call out her lie. I smiled right back. "We sure did." In reality, I'd spent the entire day with Theo and Shelby at the county records office, combing through forged documents Karina had left behind in her trail of destruction. Theo had pulled property deeds where she'd forged power of attorney signatures, drained accounts, and sold homes belonging to frail, forgotten elders. All under names she used to be, Karen Willis, Christy Owen, and now Karina Wallace. She wasn't just cruel. She was calculated. Organized. Dangerous. But not careful enough. Because she never expected someone like me to outthink her. I slipped the folder deeper beneath the table, resting my feet atop it, like it was a secret weapon strapped to my shoes. I watched her lean toward Travis, laughing, touching his wrist. "You've been working too much. You need to take a break. Let me handle things around here," she purred. And I realized then, she wasn't just after me. She was preparing to isolate him too. To take his name, his assets, maybe even turn him against me completely. But what she didn't know was that I'd already filed a protective affidavit that morning with Theo's help, legally freezing the house from sale or transfer. The moment she tried to take what she thought was already hers, the system would trap her like a sprung snare. After dinner, as she cleaned up with exaggerated sweetness, I slipped away and met Shelby on the back porch. Her hands shook as she handed me a photo. "This is Linda," she whispered. She recognized Karina's face when I showed her the video. She called her the blonde angel of death. I stared at the picture. Linda was frail, half paralyzed after a fall. But her mind was sharp, and her memory flawless. She remembered everything: how Karina used to starve her, whisper threats, take her pension. "Linda's scared," Shelby continued. "But she agreed to talk on record. She wants to stop this woman." We set the date. 3 days from now, we'd travel to Colorado, film Linda's statement, and submit it directly to the DIL, skipping the police who'd buried it years ago. We weren't just going viral anymore. We were going legal. That night, I sat in my room, brooch camera rolling, pretending to read as Karina stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway light. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "You feeling okay?" I looked up and smiled. "Never better." She stared a second longer, then stepped inside, perching on the edge of my bed like a vulture dressing up as a dove. "You know, Margaret," she said slowly, "it might be time to consider a facility. Just somewhere peaceful. Safe. Where you can get more help." My chest tightened. "You mean, where you can control my mail, my money, and my mind?" I didn't say it. I smiled instead. "That's very thoughtful." She patted my hand like I was a child, then stood and left. And the moment she did, I opened the hidden phone inside the hollow book and texted Theo one word: "She's moving." It was clear now. Karina had seen the cracks forming. She was planning to make her final play: ship me off, take over, and disappear with whatever she could still steal. But she didn't know the walls were already closing in. Because while she rehearsed her exit, I was preparing her ending. The kind of ending that lives on camera. On paper. In the law. And soon, in the memory of everyone who ever believed her lies. The air smelled like dust and disinfectant when Shelby and I stepped into the care facility in Denver, 3 states away from my porch swing and the life I used to think would quietly end in that house. I wore a scarf pulled low around my head and sunglasses big enough to hide the fear in my eyes. Shelby had rented a nondescript car, paid in cash. We weren't taking chances. Because if Karina caught even a whisper of where we were going, she'd burn everything down, including Linda. A nurse guided us through faded beige halls that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and secrets. And then we saw her, Linda Gibson. She sat in a wheelchair by the window, her left side still slightly paralyzed from the stroke Karina had ignored for hours before calling help. Her right hand clutched a rosary not out of faith, but out of habit, because it was something to hold when the world offered nothing but silence. She turned her head slowly and looked at me, her voice barely a breath. "You're the woman from the video." I nodded, and she smiled. "Took you long enough." The room was dim and quiet except for the camera Shelby had set on the dresser. Theo had trained us on how to film it legally, how to get consent, how to keep it clean for court. But none of that mattered when Linda started speaking. Her voice, soft but steady, unraveled a history that mirrored mine almost exactly. The gentle insults that became screaming matches. The control over medicine, food, and even toilet access. "She slapped me so hard once I bit through my tongue," Linda said, her voice quivering. "Then she told the doctor I was senile and attacking her. They believed her. Everyone always did. She told us how Karina would bring her guests, wealthy men looking for aging relatives they could control for inheritances or social security. Karina would coach them on how to get guardianship. Linda had been a test subject. A trial run. I heard her on the phone once, telling someone I was nearly ripe for the picking. My stomach twisted. Shelby gripped my hand so tight I thought my fingers would bruise. When Linda finished, she looked at me with those glassy, tired eyes and said, "I always hoped someone would survive her." "You did. We left with a signed affidavit, a flash drive full of video, and a burning resolve I hadn't felt since I buried my husband 20 years ago. On the ride back, I stared out the window, wondering how I'd been so blind. Not just to Karina, but to the world that let her thrive. A world where older women like me were disposable, invisible, written off as senile or stubborn when we were simply hurting and unheard. But not anymore. That night in the motel, I called Travis. "I need you to come home early tomorrow," I said. "There's something I need to show you." He sounded tired. Hesitant. "Is this about Karina?" "Yes," I said simply. "And this time, I have proof." He didn't argue. Maybe deep down, something in him still remembered the sound of my real voice, the one before I learned to speak in fear. Back at home, I found Karina in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her brows tight. "Did you go out today?" she asked. "You were gone." "Just a little shopping," I said, setting a bag of fake receipts on the counter. She eyed me, then forced a smile. "We should talk soon, Margaret. About your future." I smiled right back. "Oh, we will. Very soon." Because she didn't know Travis was coming. She didn't know Linda had spoken. And she didn't know that while she plotted to bury me, I had already started writing her obituary, one truth at a time. Travis arrived early. He always used to come through the back door, carrying laughter and half-solved problems like he used to in high school, but not this time. This time, he knocked. His face looked thinner, eyes heavy, like sleep hadn't visited him properly in weeks. Maybe deep down, he'd felt something was off. Maybe he just didn't want to admit it. I let him in, gestured silently toward the dining room, and placed the laptop on the table. "Before you say anything," I told him, "just watch." I hit play. It was the raw interview with Linda. No edits, no music, just truth bleeding from a broken woman's voice. I sat across from him in silence as Linda described the withheld food, the pain, the angel of death nickname, the coldness in Karina's eyes. The air between us felt like glass, brittle, waiting to shatter. Travis didn't blink. Didn't breathe. When the screen finally went black, he pressed his palms into his face and said, "Tell me this isn't real." My hand trembled slightly as I opened the folder, the one I'd kept hidden for weeks, documents, records, burner phone transcripts, and screenshots from Karina's shady fundraisers. "It's all real," I said. "I didn't tell you because I knew she would twist it. You're my son, Travis. But you've been living in her story. Not mine." He stood up so fast the chair screeched across the floor. "Why didn't I see this? God, Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to lose you too," I whispered. "I thought if I just endured it long enough, maybe she'd get bored. Maybe you'd come back to me." He ran both hands through his hair, pacing like a man trying to unwrite years of lies. "She told me you were declining. That you'd get confused. That you were making things up. And I believed her," he said bitterly. "Because she cried on command, and I wanted so badly to believe I had chosen right." I reached across the table, took his hand. "You still can." He looked at me then, not like the distracted man I'd seen over the past 6 years, but like my son again. "What do we do?" he asked. "You and me. How do we stop her?" I exhaled slowly, then laid out the next step. "We let her talk. We record everything. She'll feel the walls closing in, and she'll panic. That's when she'll try to act." Travis nodded, jaw clenched. "And when she does?" I met his eyes, my voice calm. "We'll already be 2 steps ahead." That evening, Travis stayed for dinner. Karina looked startled when she walked in to find him setting the table. "This is a surprise," she said, masking her discomfort with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought you had a meeting tonight." "I canceled," Travis said casually. "Figured I'd spend some time with my wife and my mother. You know, family." She hesitated, then placed a hand on his arm. "Everything okay?" Oh, we'll talk, he replied. Later. I watched her falter, just slightly. Her perfect rhythm skipped a beat. That night, when she went upstairs early, claiming a headache, I opened the laptop again and showed Travis the surveillance footage I'd been secretly gathering for months. He watched her yelling at me in the kitchen. Throwing a dish. Making me scrub the floor with my bare hands while she scrolled her phone. How did I miss all this? He whispered. Because she made sure you were never around when it happened, I said. And because I stopped crying in front of you a long time ago. Travis looked up at me, grief in his face. She's going to fight back when she realizes what we've done. I know, I said. But this time, I'm not alone. And neither are you. Outside, the night was quiet. But inside this house, a storm had started, one that Karina couldn't stop. And the woman she thought she'd broken beyond repair was no longer afraid to strike back. It happened 2 mornings later, while Travis was at work and the house felt heavy with that strange calm before everything goes wrong. I was slicing apples in the kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and butter warming the air, when Karina came in, barefoot, eyes red but uncrying, her robe dragging like a shadow. I turned toward her and smiled, acting as if nothing had changed. She walked to the door behind me, clicked the lock shut, then leaned against it. You think you're clever, she said softly, almost like a lullaby. With your videos and your little hidden phones. I stopped cutting. The blade hovered in midair. I don't know what you mean. She chuckled, low and bitter. Don't play dumb, Margaret. I saw the burner. I found the paper trail. You think Travis won't believe me? That I can't spin this into your delusions again? I've done it before. I'll do it better this time. I set the knife down. Slowly. He's already seen it all, I said. The footage. The testimonies. Your text messages. Everything. Her lips curled back, more beast than woman now. Then I guess I have nothing left to lose. She stepped closer, eyes wild. You want to play victim? Fine. Let's make it real. I will put you in a home so far off the grid, no one will hear your name again. You'll rot in a room smelling of bleach and mold while Travis moves on and forgets you ever existed. I held my ground. You're not going to touch me. She leaned in, her breath hot against my cheek. No one will stop me. But then, just as her fingers brushed the edge of my sweater, there was a knock. Sharp. 3 times. Her body tensed. Who's that? She snapped. I didn't answer. The front door creaked open, and Shelby's voice rang through the hall. Margaret? You left your wallet in the car. Karina blinked, startled, then stepped back like a puppet with its strings cut. You're going to regret this, she muttered. So will your little friends. She stormed out. I unlocked the kitchen door, walked out slowly, and found Shelby in the foyer with Theo behind her, camera in hand. He had filmed everything through the window. We got it, he said. Everything. Her threat. Her confession. I felt my legs nearly give, but Shelby steadied me. She's unraveling, Margaret. That was the last mask falling. Theo handed me the camera. But you're not done yet. You still need to break her where she thinks she's strongest. I nodded. Her pride. Exactly. That afternoon, I called the local community center, the one Karina used to donate to in public just to look generous. I scheduled a private showing of the video footage for the board members, including the mayor's wife, who had adored Karina for her charming fundraisers and elder outreach brunches. Then I uploaded the Linda interview, unedited, to a protected drive. Scheduled it for release in 3 days. A ticking clock. If Karina tried to flee, her name would light up screens across the country. If she stayed, the courts would find her. That evening, as I folded towels in the guest room, I heard her on the phone again. Furious. Panicked. No, we're not safe here anymore, she hissed. I told you, she found someone. 2 someones. Maybe more. I need another plan. Fast. She paused. Don't tell me to disappear again. You owe me, Marlene. You promised me a new life if this one failed. My hand tightened around the towel. I walked past the door without making a sound. She was trapped. And she knew it. But she wouldn't go down without trying to burn the house behind her. So I braced myself. Because the woman who once cowered in silence had now stood in the storm, and she'd learned how to speak with thunder. And if Karina wanted war, she was going to get one. The night after Karina threatened me in the kitchen, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face up close, teeth gritted, voice dripping venom. But fear no longer sat in my chest like it used to. It had been replaced by something sharper, clarity. She was wounded now. Cornered. And wounded animals were the most dangerous. I knew she wouldn't back down. She'd try something. And I was right. At 2:13 a.m., the hidden phone in my bedside drawer buzzed softly. Theo had set it to notify me of suspicious login attempts. The alert read, "Unrecognized login attempt to your email from a device named Karina's iPad." I smiled in the dark. She'd finally taken the bait. A week earlier, I'd left a printed email draft just slightly poking out of my desk drawer, just enough for her to see when she accidentally brought me the wrong mail. The draft was a fake, an invented message to a fictional attorney claiming I was preparing to transfer the house to Travis. It was bait. And now, she was scrambling to find out how much power I still had. What she didn't know was that Theo had already gained access to her real email account. And what we saw inside turned our stomachs. Messages with Marlene. Spreadsheets detailing elder care targets across 2 states. Payout summaries. Plans to fake power of attorney forms. Karina had been doing this for years, hopping identities, laundering money through fake charitable causes, and selling consultations to other women looking to exploit vulnerable seniors. One message chilled me to the bone. It was dated 2 months ago and labeled, "Exit Plan, if Margaret gets suspicious." The file outlined steps: isolate her, accelerate her, decline, via medication, move her to a memory care unit, sell the house using forged documents, and disappear again. My own life, written like a business transaction. I sat back in my chair and whispered aloud, "No more." That morning, I woke early and dressed in soft lavender, the same color I wore to my husband's funeral. I cooked breakfast and served Karina as usual, eggs just the way she liked them, coffee with that ridiculous vanilla creamer. She eyed me with suspicion but took the plate anyway. "You're up early," she said. "I figured I'd be good to you today," I replied. "After all, you've done so much for me." She raised an eyebrow. "What's gotten into you?" "Just grateful," I lied, with a smile. She left soon after for her fake Pilates class. I knew she was meeting someone, probably Marlene's courier with the fake documents. Travis was already on his way home with Theo, and Shelby had set up the projector at the community center. Everything was moving fast. And Karina? She was too busy looking backward to realize the road ahead was crumbling. When she returned home that evening, she looked pale. Sweaty. She slammed the front door and beelined for the study. I followed behind quietly. She opened the drawer where she'd hidden the fake deed and froze. It was gone. I stepped into the room. "Looking for something?" She spun around, eyes wide. "Where is it?" "Safe," I said. "Along with the signed statement from Linda, the video of you threatening me, and your emails to Marlene." Her face shifted, rage trying to mask fear, failing. "You're bluffing," she spat. "You're old. Weak. You couldn't have, but I did," I interrupted. "And now it's done." She backed up like a startled deer. "You don't know what you've done." "No," I said calmly, "you don't know what I've survived." And then the doorbell rang. She flinched. Travis stood on the porch with Theo and a uniformed officer. A quiet one. One who'd been waiting for the final piece before making his move. Karina ran. Out the back door, across the yard, barefoot and frantic, like the devil herself had broken free. She disappeared over the back fence, screaming into the wind. But she didn't realize the cameras Theo installed 2 nights ago caught her every step. And by morning, her face would be broadcast across every news station in the state. Her plan to erase me was finished. But mine to expose her? That was just beginning. It was surreal, watching the news with a mug of tea in hand, as if I were just any other old woman starting her day. But I wasn't. I was the woman in the shadows of the story that now played on screen. Local woman wanted an elder fraud ring, the anchor said with just the right blend of shock and practiced indifference. Karina Wallace, formerly known as Karen Willis and Christy Owen, is suspected of orchestrating a string of identity frauds and elder abuse cases across state lines. Authorities asked that anyone with information come forward. They flashed her photo across the screen, the one we pulled from her own burner phone. It was taken years ago, but the eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. Hollow. Travis stood behind me, silent, hands in his pockets. Shelby sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through messages from people reaching out, strangers, caregivers, victims, even reporters. Some had seen the video. Some had their own Karina. You did it, Shelby said quietly. You actually did it. But I couldn't smile. Not yet. Because something still didn't sit right. Karina wasn't the kind of woman to run and vanish without leaving one last trick behind. And I was right. At 4:23 p.m., while Shelby left to take a call and Travis stepped out to pick up groceries, I heard it, the faint creak of the back window in the laundry room. I stood in the hallway, frozen, pulse roaring in my ears. Someone was inside. I slipped into the coat closet, pulled out the walking stick I never used outside. I gripped it like a weapon and waited. Footsteps moved toward the study. Soft, cautious. Whoever it was, they weren't after jewelry. They were looking for documents. For leverage. For silence. My silence. I crept behind them as they entered the study, their back to me, hood low. They rifled through drawers Karina used to control. And when I stepped into the room, I saw the profile of a woman, not Karina, but someone else. Younger. Pale. Nervous. Don't move, I said, my voice steadier than my shaking knees. She froze. Then slowly turned. Please don't scream, she said quickly. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you inside my house? Because Karina sent me, she whispered. But I'm not like her. I swear. Her name was Tara. She was 27. A former hospice aide Karina had recruited last year. They'd met at a support group for caregivers that Marlene hosted in Nevada. I didn't know what I was signing up for, she said, her voice cracking. At first it was just paperwork. Then she asked me to sign witness forms, transfer things behind people's backs. I kept the cane tight in my grip. Why are you here now? She told me to destroy anything left. Anything that could be traced back to her. I didn't know she'd hurt you. She tried to disappear, I said flatly. You're cleaning up the blood she left behind. Tara dropped to her knees. I want to testify. I have files, emails, call logs, even video. But I'm scared. I think she's watching me. I studied her. Thin. Unsteady. Maybe guilty. Maybe useful. I called Theo immediately. Within an hour, he was at the house, and we had Tara on record. What she brought with her changed everything. Karina hadn't just hurt people. She had profited from it, through illegal guardianship deals, backdoor financial transfers, and worse, she'd been linked to at least 2 unexplained deaths. She didn't kill them, Tara said, but she let things happen. She waited too long to call help. She stole their medication. She made them easier to manage. The air in the room grew colder. Travis returned as Tara was escorted out under Theo's protection. He looked at me with horror. What do we do now? I turned to him slowly. We finish it. We don't just expose her. We make sure she can never hurt anyone again. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to every woman who had messaged me since the video. Every daughter, every nurse, every grandmother who whispered, "Me too." I told them I wasn't brave. That I had waited too long. That silence had nearly killed me. But I also told them it's never too late to speak. Never too late to fight. Because for the first time in years, I believed that. Truly. But as I sealed those envelopes, I saw a shadow move across my front yard. And I knew, Karina wasn't finished. Not yet. And neither was I. The yard was still when I stepped outside, but I knew she'd been there. The broken tulip stems, the faint trail of shoe prints in the soft soil, the cigarette but still warm near the edge of the fence. Karina had returned. Not to talk. Not to run. But to watch. The predator in her was too stubborn to flee without seeing the ruins she'd tried so hard to prevent. My survival, my strength, my son's belief in me. I didn't call Travis. I didn't panic. I sat on the porch swing and turned on the light, knowing full well she was somewhere out there in the trees, maybe in someone else's clothes, maybe holding a stolen phone, waiting for me to flinch. But I didn't. I folded my blanket, set my tea down, and stared into the night like it owed me something. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her. Not of what people would think. Not of the storm. The next day, I followed through with the final part of the plan. Theo and Shelby joined me as I walked into the district courthouse with a folder labeled Victims of Karina Wallace. Inside were affidavits, videos, signed statements, emails, and financial documents, all lined up like dominoes. Theo had already spoken to a prosecutor quietly, and word had reached the ears of 2 senators' offices. Suddenly, this wasn't just a viral video. It was a case. A case tied to elder exploitation, financial crime, and interstate identity fraud. But while the wheels of justice were just starting to turn, I was already thinking 2 steps ahead. Because Karina was unpredictable, and like a cornered fox, she would go feral if given the chance. So I gave her a chance. I sent her a message, one I knew would bait her better than fear. You were right. I am a burden. But I'm done fighting. Come home. It was fake, of course. Sent from a dummy account Theo helped me set up. But Karina had always hungered for control more than money, and I knew her pride would never let her ignore that message. She would come back. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But soon. And when she did, the cameras would be waiting. Travis and I set up the final layer, motion sensors, live video feeds, and 1 camera hidden in the antique mirror in the hallway, where she always paused to fix her hair before she left. That mirror would now capture the fall of her reflection. Meanwhile, Tara, now under legal protection, handed over the last file we needed, a hidden audio recording of Karina coaching a young woman on how to manipulate a doctor into signing involuntary mental health orders. My heart stopped when I heard my name in that audio. Margaret Reed? Oh, she's halfway there already. Just a few confused moments in front of the doctor, and we'll have her shipped off quietly. The son won't protest. He's too busy. She had planned to erase me, not with death, but disappearance. Legal. Clean. Final. But now, the world would know her name. And I would make sure they never forgot it. That night, I went to bed without locking the front door. A risk, yes. But I wanted her to feel welcome. I wanted her to think I was still weak, still fooled, still cornered in my own home. She thrived on illusions, and I had become the master of crafting them. I drifted to sleep with one thought in my mind: let her come. Let her try. Because the woman she thought she had buried was now standing in the light, with the world watching, the truth recording, and justice waiting just behind the lens. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the doorknob turned. No knock. No hesitation. Just the quiet click of someone who believed she still belonged here. I was waiting in the armchair, wearing the same robe she used to mock, the same slippers she once kicked when I didn't move fast enough. My heart pounded, but my face didn't show it. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my mind. And now that it was happening, I felt strangely calm, like a storm had finally passed and left silence behind. Karina stepped in slowly, scanning the living room, her eyes darting like a predator's. She was thinner, more tired, wearing a ball cap low over her face and carrying a duffel bag slung across one shoulder. But her voice was the same snake's hiss I'd memorized in my nightmares. "Well," she said softly, "isn't this sweet? You left the door open. Just like old times." I didn't move. I just looked up and said, "You came." "Of course I came," she smirked. "You finally remembered your place. Realized you can't live without me." She dropped the bag and walked in fully. The cameras began recording. The one in the lamp. The one in the clock. The one in the mirror, angled perfectly to capture her entire descent. "I've decided to forgive you," she said, circling the room. "You just need rest. Peace. You've been overwhelmed." "You mean, I stopped being easy to control," I replied. Her smile faltered, just for a moment. "You know, Karina," I said gently, "when you look in that mirror, who do you see?" She tilted her head, confused. "What?" I stood, walked slowly to the antique mirror on the wall. "Because I see a thief. A liar. A woman who smiles when old women cry. I see someone who hurt dozens of people and believed she could vanish every time the truth got too loud." Her eyes narrowed. "You've been playing me." "No," I said, turning back to her, "I've been surviving you." She lunged suddenly, grabbing my wrist. "Where is it?" "The paperwork. The recordings. You think the police will care? You think they'll believe some old woman with shaky hands and a sob story?" But then, just as her grip tightened, the front door swung open. Travis. Theo. Officer Markham from the District Task Force. And Shelby, camera in hand, already rolling. Karina's hand dropped. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. "Hello again," Theo said. "Smile. You're live." "No," she whispered. "You tricked me." "You tricked yourself," I said, stepping away from her. "You came back thinking I was still the woman who flinched when you raised your voice. But that woman is gone." Karina turned to Travis. "Baby, she's lying. She's sick." "I've seen the footage," he said coldly. "I've seen everything. You don't get to use my mother again." Her eyes flashed pure rage, but there was nowhere to run. No one to call. And for the first time, she looked small. Pathetic. Cornered by her own reflection. The officer stepped forward. "Karina Wallace, you are under arrest for multiple counts of elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation." The cuffs clicked around her wrists. She screamed, loud, wild, like an animal caught in its own trap. "You'll regret this, Margaret," she shrieked as she was led out. "You'll die alone in that chair like you deserve." I stood in the doorway as the squad car pulled away, her face still twisted in rage behind the glass. But I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just whispered, "No, Karina. I'll die free." Travis put a hand on my shoulder, and Shelby wiped a tear from her cheek. "It's over," she whispered. "She's gone." But I knew better. The woman was gone, yes. But her damage, the scars she left on me and others, they wouldn't vanish overnight. And that's why I wasn't done. Because now, I had a voice. And I intended to use it. It was 2 weeks after Karina's arrest when the invitation came, hand-delivered in an envelope with gold trim that felt far too fancy for the kind of pain I still carried. The town council had heard about my case. Not just from the police reports or Shelby's careful interviews, but from the flood of people who had seen the video online. It had gone viral again, not just for its shock, but for what it revealed, the hidden epidemic of elder abuse in plain sight. I was no longer just a local widow with stiff joints and bad knees. I was a symbol. A warning. A woman who stood up when no one expected her to. And they wanted me to speak. Only 5 minutes, the organizer had said politely. Just a brief reflection. I said yes. But I planned something far less brief. The community center was packed, rows of polished chairs filled with officials, nurses, caregivers, retirees, young people with earbuds tucked halfway into their ears, pretending to look bored. I stepped up to the podium in my gray sweater, the same one Karina once called Grandma Camouflage, and adjusted the microphone with hands that no longer trembled. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Margaret Reed. And I wasn't always brave." The room hushed. For 6 years, I lived in silence. Not because I didn't know what was happening to me, but because I thought no one would believe it. Because when you're old, people stop listening. They stop seeing. You become part of the wallpaper of life, polite nods, patronizing smiles, but no real attention. I paused, watching heads tilt slightly. Karina Wallace didn't just take my dignity. She planned to take my home, my name, my identity. And she nearly did. But I'm not standing here because I fought back with fists or lawyers. I'm here because I recorded what so many of us have lived through in secret, and I let the world see it. A woman in the second row wiped her eyes. An older man nodded slowly, eyes damp. "If you think this only happens to women like me," I continued, "you're wrong. It happens in rich homes, in nursing homes, in assisted living centers and behind the closed doors of perfect neighborhoods. It happens to people who raise families, who serve their countries, who once taught your children or built your bridges. And it's happening still." I reached into my bag and held up a thick binder labeled testimonies. Since my video went public, I've received hundreds of letters. Emails. Calls. From people who said, "Me too." Some were too scared to show their faces. Some are still living with the people who hurt them. Some don't even know they're being abused. And if we keep ignoring them, they will vanish into the silence we've created. The room was still now. No coughs. No shifting. Just a deep, collective quiet. I didn't come here to relive my pain, I finished. I came here to break the silence. Because if no one else will speak for the voiceless, I will. When I stepped down, they stood. Slowly at first, then all together. Not for the woman I used to be, but for the voice I had found. Afterward, a nurse in her 30s approached me outside and whispered, "My aunt died last year. I think something was wrong." But I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't know what to look for. I took her hand. "You do now." That night, I didn't go straight home. I visited Linda at the care facility. Her eyes were clearer that evening. "She's gone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And she can't touch anyone else." Linda smiled. "Good. But there's more like her." "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm not done. Because the truth is, Karina may have been the villain of my story, but silence was her partner. And now that I had shattered it, I was going to use every breath I had left to make sure no one like her ever thrived again in the shadows. I almost didn't open it. The envelope was plain. No stamp. Hand delivered. Left in my mailbox sometime between sunset and dusk. At first I thought it was just another thank you card, one of the many I'd begun receiving from strangers who had seen the video, heard me speak, or whispered their own stories through trembling fingers. But the moment I saw the handwriting, I knew. Jagged. Compressed. Each loop strangled by pressure, each word fighting to hold its shape. I had seen that writing before, in the files Shelby uncovered about Karina's old victims. One file in particular had haunted me: Dolores Varnell, age 78. Found deceased in her recliner. Cause: overdose. But the note found beside her had never sat right with me. I'm tired, it read. I'm a burden. I make everyone miserable. This is better. That was before we knew Karina had lived with her. Before we knew Karina had controlled her pills, her phone calls, her food. And now a letter had arrived at my door with the same writing. Same hand. Only this time, it was addressed to me. I know what she did. I helped her once. I didn't mean to. But I was scared. She said if I told anyone, I'd end up like the others. But now she's gone, and I can't sleep. I need to talk to you. Please don't show the police. Not yet. No signature. Just an address. A halfway house 2 towns over, known for taking in battered women, addicts, and the forgotten. I sat on the porch for hours that evening, the letter clutched in my lap, trying to decide what this was: a warning, a confession, or a trap. When I showed it to Theo, his face darkened. We can't ignore this, he said. But we have to be careful. If this person is who I think it might be, she's been in Karina's shadow longer than we realized. Who do you think it is? I asked. He hesitated. Her first partner. Before Marlene. A woman named Celine Harper. Used to work as an estate executor. She vanished after a scandal. Karina mentioned her once in an old message, said she was too soft to finish the job. And you think she's alive? I think she wants to make peace before she can't anymore. The next morning, Travis insisted on driving me to the halfway house. The building was worn but clean, tucked between 2 auto shops and painted a dull blue that reminded me of hospital corridors. We met with the coordinator, who led us to the back garden where a woman sat under a cherry tree, head low, hands trembling as she smoked. She looked up when I approached, mid-50s, face lined more from guilt than time. You're her, she said. The one who fought back. And you're the one who didn't? I asked softly. Her eyes filled with tears. I wanted to. But Karina knew things about me. About my mother. She threatened to expose everything. I was young. I didn't think she'd ever go that far. But she did, I said. And you helped her. She nodded. I forged signatures. Transferred money. Told a few doctors that the clients were unstable. Just enough to make the paperwork slide through. And Dolores? Her mouth crumpled. She begged me not to leave her alone with Karina. She knew. She felt it. But I was too much of a coward. And when I found out she was gone, her voice broke. I haven't slept since. Why write to me now? I asked. She looked me in the eyes for the first time. Because the story doesn't end with Karina. Marlene's still out there. And there are others. Women like Karina. Men too. It's an entire network. And I know where the files are. My heart lurched. Where? She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Storage unit in Oregon. Paid for under a shell name. Karina kept backups of everything there, contracts, names, bank info. She used to say, if I go down, I'm taking everyone with me. Travis and I exchanged glances. I knew what I had to do. I had already become the voice for survivors. But now, I had a chance to dismantle the machine that fed on people like me. I stood slowly. Celine, I said. If you want forgiveness, help me burn the rest of it down. She nodded. I will. But we have to move fast. Because if Marlene knows I've talked to you, she'll come for you, I finished. And I meant it. Because even in her absence, Karina's legacy wasn't finished. But neither was mine. We left before sunrise, the sky still bruised with early morning shadows, the kind that make everything feel like a warning. Travis drove, his jaw tight, both hands on the wheel like he needed something to hold together. Celine sat in the back seat, pale and quiet, clutching the keys to a place she hadn't seen in 5 years. The drive to Oregon was nearly 6 hours, but we didn't speak much. I stared out the window and watched the scenery blur by, mountains, gas stations, miles of nothing. All of it humming with the same thought: what if what we find changes everything? The storage facility looked ordinary enough. Corrugated metal doors. Keypads. Rows of numbered locks. A bored young man with a clipboard signed us in. He barely looked at Celine. He probably saw women like her all the time and didn't realize that this one held the map to a criminal empire built on the backs of the elderly. We approached unit number 117, the rusted lock heavy in Celine's shaking hand. She turned the key slowly, and when the metal door rolled up, the smell hit us instantly: mildew, old paper, something chemical beneath it. I gagged. Travis pulled his shirt over his nose. Inside were boxes. Stacks and stacks of labeled banker's boxes, each with a year written in thick black marker. 2014, 2015. 2017, she never used 2016, Celine whispered. That was the year she said she had to lay low. That was the year Linda had her stroke, I said. Celine flinched. I know. Theo had arranged for us to wear gloves, bring sealed evidence bags, and document everything by photo. We opened the first box marked 2017, and what we found stole the breath from all three of us. Files on real people. Names. Addresses. Diagnoses. Prescriptions. All of them seniors. Many were widows, some were veterans, a few were disabled adults with no living family. She called them quiet targets, Celine murmured. People no one checks on. People who won't scream when things go wrong. These aren't just her clients, Travis said. These are victims. We found signatures that matched those on bank forms. Power of attorney letters signed by different hands but identical strokes. Photos clipped to dossiers. Bank statements showing money siphoned in neat little increments, $500 here, $700 there, small enough to not raise alarms. But it wasn't the documents that broke me. It was the folder labeled, undone. Inside were 9 photos. 9 people. Each one with the word failed scrawled across their face. What does this mean? I asked, heart pounding. Celine paled. Those were the ones who figured it out. Or tried to fight back. Karina always marked them that way. Some were put into care homes. Some just vanished. I pulled out the last photo. My own face. Marked with a single word in red ink, rewrite. She planned to erase me, I whispered. Not just from the house, from history. Celine nodded. She said you were going to be her masterpiece. The proof that she could break someone completely, even a mother. I sat down on one of the crates and let the cold reality sink in. Karina had been evil. But the network she moved through, the facilitators, the silent partners, the people who turned away while she falsified identities and robbed lives, they were the real machine. And now that she was gone, they'd either scatter, or strike. Theo met us at a safe house that evening. We handed over the files. He opened one and grimaced. This is enough to indict a dozen people, maybe more. But if Marlene gets wind of this, she'll come for us, Travis said. Theo looked at me. For you, Margaret. You're the loose thread now. The one that unraveled the entire fabric. I met his eyes, calm. Then let her come. Just like Karina did. Because I had already learned something Marlene never would. Sometimes the most dangerous voice is the one they thought had gone quiet. And mine was just getting louder. Theo's face was stone as he showed me the text. He'd rerouted all my calls and messages through a secure number by then, but someone had still found a way through. The message wasn't sent from a number, it was routed through an encrypted anonymous relay service. No name. No trace. Just 8 cold words that pierced through the morning like a knife. Take it down or bury your son. This is her, I whispered. Marlene. She's scared, Shelby said. Cornered. That kind of threat? That's desperation. She knows the leak worked. It had. We'd published the first round of evidence, dozens of anonymized profiles and photos of forged documents, through a major nonprofit watchdog site. The press picked it up immediately. Headlines began to roll out across the country. Elder exploitation ring exposed, how power of attorney was turned into a weapon. Victims and their families started coming forward, quiet voices at first, then dozens, then hundreds. One woman in Nebraska emailed to say, I knew something was wrong when my aunt stopped recognizing her own checkbook. A man in Arizona sent a photo of his father's signature on a guardianship form dated 6 months after he died. The rot was deeper than we thought. But the threat reminded me of one awful truth: these people didn't just feed on silence, they fed on fear. And Marlene was still out there. Still watching. Still pulling strings. Theo activated a silent protocol, moving me and Travis into a temporary safe house just outside town. We have to assume she's watching your home, he said. She knows you're the face now. The symbol. And that makes me the target, I said quietly. Exactly. I looked at my son as we packed the car. He tried to be brave, but I saw it in his eyes, the guilt of not seeing what Karina had done, the terror of losing me again. We're not running, I told him in the driveway. We're just repositioning. We fight smarter now. The safe house was simple, plain furniture, sparse windows, a quiet patch of forest behind it that rustled like secrets. It reminded me of the isolation Karina once tried to force on me, but this time, I had chosen it. That night, Theo and Shelby arranged a live stream, a safe, encrypted one. I sat in front of the camera in the living room, wearing a shawl Linda had given me just before the stroke stole her words again. I didn't write a script. I didn't rehearse. I just spoke. They threatened my son today, I began. Because I shared the truth. Because I dared to say that elderly lives matter. That we're not just burdens or broken furniture to be shuffled away and stolen from. My voice held steady, even as my fingers trembled. But if they think fear will shut me up, they haven't listened closely enough. I held up a binder filled with names, not just Karina's victims, but others from the storage unit. These are real people. Some dead. Some barely surviving. All of them erased by paper and greed. I leaned forward. To the one who sent that message. I'm not afraid of you. I've already lived through worse. And if you think threatening my son will stop me, you never understood what it means to be a mother. I would rather die with the truth than live quietly in your lie. The live stream reached over 100,000 views overnight. Donations poured in. Legal firms offered pro bono work. Victims' families began banding together. But with every bit of attention came the pressure. The next morning, a plain manila envelope appeared on the porch of the safe house. No postage, no fingerprints. Inside was a single photograph, me. Sitting on the porch swing 2 nights ago. The message written across it in sharp ink: don't forget who's watching. I turned to Theo. She's closer than we thought. We need to draw her out, he said. On our terms. I nodded. Then let's give her what she wants. Let's leak the location of something she thinks we're hiding. Something that'll make her show her face. And what's that? He asked. I looked down at the folder in my lap. Karina's final will. A document she forged, and a name it exposes. Not just Marlene. But someone even higher up in the chain. It's time we break this wide open, I said. And if she wants war, she picked the wrong woman to threaten. We leaked the location at noon, a decoy site listed on a private server as the hidden backup vault for the rest of Karina's documents. Theo posted it carefully in one of the encrypted whistleblower forums Marlene had been known to monitor through her shell identities. He gave it just enough credibility to bait her, just enough vagueness to make her paranoid. She'll take the risk, Theo said. People like her always do. Power makes them reckless when they think something they buried might claw its way back up. We set up surveillance. Cameras hidden in the trees. 2 rented cars across the street, one manned by Shelby, one by a retired federal marshal Theo trusted with his life. I stayed at the safe house with Travis, watching it all unfold from a monitor in the spare bedroom. Every shadow. Every movement. And then, at 3:46 p.m., a silver sedan pulled up outside the decoy building. 2 figures stepped out. The first was Marlene, hair gray but styled, expensive coat, posture of someone used to being obeyed. Cold. Cruel. Calculated. The other person made my heart stop. No, I whispered, leaning forward. It can't be. Travis looked up from the second screen. Who is that? I didn't answer at first. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too violently to speak. Because the second figure, taller, thinner, head bowed, was someone I hadn't seen in over 40 years. Someone who was supposed to be dead. My sister. Lydia. She disappeared when she was 23. I was just 17. The story we were told was that she'd fallen into addiction. That she'd vanished, maybe run away, maybe overdosed. My parents gave up searching after 2 years. And I buried the pain. Buried it like a coffin too heavy to carry. But there she was. Alive. Following Marlene like a shadow. That's not possible, I whispered. It's her, Shelby said through the headset. We're facial matching right now. It's her. Margaret, she's alive. What the hell is she doing with Marlene? Travis asked. Theo didn't answer. He was already scanning old case files. We watched on screen as Marlene and Lydia entered the building, walked straight to the back wall where we had staged several fake boxes marked property deeds, classified. Marlene opened one and pulled out the top folder. Her face twitched. She knows it's fake, Shelby whispered. She knows we're watching. And then Lydia turned to the wall camera, stared straight into the lens, and mouthed 4 words, "You have to run." My blood turned cold. She's warning us. About what? Travis asked. Theo checked the rear camera feed. They're not alone. There's a third person in the back of the car. Male. Large. Military posture. Security? I asked. No, Theo said grimly. A cleaner. If Marlene senses she's being cornered, she'll burn the trail behind her. Then we have to end this now, I said, standing. Before she decides I'm not worth chasing anymore, and starts erasing what's left. Agreed, Theo said. But Margaret, you need to prepare yourself. If Lydia's with her, this goes deeper than anything we imagined. This network, this family of predators, they've been recruiting for decades. She's not one of them, I said. I don't believe that. Then you need to find out why she disappeared, he said. And why she's come back now. The next morning, another envelope arrived, slid under the motel door of the safe house. No postage. No name. Just a single note, you don't understand what you're digging into. Stop, or you'll lose more than you already have. Inside the envelope? A photo of Lydia holding a baby. My baby. A copy of a birth certificate with my name scratched out. Date, 1971. I never had a baby, I whispered. Margaret, Travis said carefully. What if they made sure you didn't remember? The room spun. Because there were years I couldn't remember. Times in my teens when I was drugged for nerves. Times I was told to forget dreams that felt too real. What if I didn't lose my sister? What if they took her, and something else, with her? I sat down slowly. My breath came short. Because now I knew. Karina was just the beginning. Marlene was the bridge. But whoever had orchestrated this from the start? They were family. Mine. I didn't speak for hours. I sat by the window of the safe house while the forest moved around me, branches swaying like whispers, wind humming old truths. The photograph of Lydia holding a baby trembled in my hands. My name was scratched out. But I knew that face. I knew that smile. It was mine. Younger. Hollow. Still filled with whatever innocence hadn't yet been stolen. I don't understand, I said finally, voice barely a breath. I don't remember a baby. Not ever. Theo sat across from me, his laptop open, pulling up records from decades ago. Shelby paced near the door. Travis stood in the kitchen, hands on the counter, frozen in disbelief. Your medical records from 1971 are sealed, Theo said. Which is odd. You were 17, not a minor in custody. There's no legal reason for them to be locked like that unless someone had them sealed deliberately, Shelby finished. To hide something. What are you saying? I asked. That I had a child and forgot? You didn't forget, Theo said quietly. You were forced to forget. I felt the room tilt. Your parents had connections, Shelby continued. And back then, girls who shamed their families with out-of-wedlock pregnancies, they were often institutionalized. Sent to homes. Sedated. Their children taken. It happened more than people realize. No, I whispered. No one ever told me, because that was the point, she said gently. They erased it. And then they rewrote your life as if it never happened. I thought back to the years of bad nerves, the sudden move after Lydia disappeared, the way my mother used to flinch when certain songs played on the radio. I remembered lying in bed one night, aching, empty, and hearing my father say, "She'll never ask." That part of her is gone. I thought he meant grief. But maybe he meant something else. And Lydia? I asked. What happened to her? Theo flipped his laptop around. We found this. It was a record from a closed facility in New Mexico, St. Bridget's home for unwed mothers. Lydia Harper. Checked in under her maiden name. Emergency contact listed as a Dr. M. Ortiz. Marlene, I whispered. She's been part of this for decades. She didn't just run a network, Theo said. She recruited broken girls. Controlled them. Molded them. Lydia was one of her first. That's why she's still with her, Travis said slowly. She's not just hiding. She thinks she owes her. Or she's trapped, I said. Or both. We sat in silence, the weight of truth filling every inch of the room. Then I stood. I want to see her. Margaret, Theo began. No, I said firmly. She came back for a reason. She warned me. I want to know why. Shelby glanced at Theo. He gave a reluctant nod. We've traced Marlene's car. They've moved to a private lodge just outside Rainer Hollow. It's isolated. No cameras. No neighbors. Perfect place for another secret, I said. We're not letting you go in alone, Travis said. You won't have to, I replied. Because I'm not going to fight this as Margaret Reed, the quiet widow. I'm going as who I really am. The woman they tried to erase. That night, I stared into the mirror, tracing the lines on my face, not as marks of age, but as maps of survival. I thought of the child I may have held. The sister I thought I'd lost. The pieces of my life stolen, buried, rewritten. And I whispered to the girl inside me, the one they tried to break, you're still here. And now, it's your turn. The lodge in Rainer Hollow sat in the shadow of old mountains, blanketed by fog and silence. It looked peaceful, charming, even, but I could feel the rot beneath the paint. The kind of place designed for secrets. We arrived just before dusk, Shelby and Theo staying in the car with eyes on every window. Travis walked me to the door, but I told him to wait outside. This was something I had to do alone. I knocked once. The door creaked open slowly. Lydia stood there. Her face, older now, weathered and wary, was still unmistakably hers. The sister I'd grown up with, giggling under the sheets, sneaking cookies, whispering stories about our futures. But this wasn't that girl. This was a woman carved by survival. Her lips trembled. You came. You warned me, I said. I had to. We sat in the main room, quiet except for the ticking of an old clock on the mantel. Neither of us touched the tea she poured. They told me you died during childbirth, she whispered. That your body couldn't handle it. I was 17. I didn't know who to believe. And when I started asking questions, they sent me away. To Marlene, I said. She nodded. She found me. Took me in. Told me she could protect me. I didn't know what she really was until it was too late. Why stay? I asked. You could have escaped. Because she had him, Lydia said. The baby. She said if I ever left, he'd vanish too. My heart stopped. Wait. The baby was mine. Lydia shook her head slowly. No, Margaret. He was mine. Silence. The air went still. My hands began to tremble. You were the one who got pregnant? Yes, she whispered. But our parents couldn't handle it. They said it would destroy the family. That I wasn't strong enough to raise a child. So they told everyone it was you. They drugged you. Told the doctors you were unstable. They made you believe it. I couldn't breathe. I stood, gripping the edge of the table to keep from falling. You let me believe I was broken. I didn't know until it was too late, she cried. When I found out, I tried to come back. But by then, you were already gone. They'd moved. Changed your number. Disappeared you. And you stayed with her? With Marlene? She said she could help me find him. My son. She used that promise to keep me close. And every time I tried to leave, she showed me photos. Told me he'd been adopted by one of her families, but she never said which. She had power, Margaret. She had people everywhere. I sank into the chair again, my heart pounding so loud it echoed in my head. Why warn me now? Because Karina's arrest ruined everything. Marlene's network is collapsing. Files are leaking. And if she goes down, she'll take everyone, including me. She reached into her coat and pulled out a flash drive. This has the list. Names, dates, money trails, placements. Even the man who adopted my son. Your son. Both. What do you mean, both? Lydia looked down, tears falling silently. There were twins. They told me one died during delivery. But the records say otherwise. I froze. I have a child? She nodded. Somewhere out there, we both do. Before I could speak again, the back door slammed open. Theo and Shelby rushed inside. We have to go. Now, Theo said. Marlene's people are here. 2 black SUVs just pulled up down the trail. Lydia grabbed my hand. I'll go with you. I'll testify. But you have to promise me something. What? Don't let them erase me again. I nodded. Never. We ran. Out the front, through the woods, down a side trail Shelby had mapped earlier. Behind us, voices barked. Lights swept the trees. But we didn't stop. Not this time. Because we weren't running in fear. We were running towards something, truth. And it was finally catching fire. We didn't stop running until we reached the extraction point. That's what Theo called it, like we were part of some covert operation. In truth, it was just a borrowed van, a back road, and a network of allies who knew how to hide things, especially people. Lydia huddled beside me in the back seat, her hands shaking but her eyes clear. Shelby drove. Theo monitored the drive with 2 phones, 1 tablet, and a face so tense it looked carved from stone. "They're still following the decoy route," he said. "We bought some time." "How long?" I asked. "Enough," he said. "But this ends tonight." "No more hiding?" Shelby asked. "No more shadows," I said. "It's time the world hears everything." We drove straight to the courthouse in Portland, where Theo had arranged a protected press conference. Not one with banners and a podium. Not a sanitized statement. No, this was a raw live stream, unfiltered, hosted by a national investigative outlet. The leak had gone global. And now they wanted the woman behind the movement. Me. They called it the silence breaker interview. We were rushed through the side entrance. Makeup people offered powder, I declined. A producer asked for talking points, I said, the truth doesn't need a script. They sat me down under a single light. No backdrop. No dramatics. Just a chair, a camera, and a question, Margaret Reed. You've become the face of a growing wave of elder abuse exposure. But it started with your own family. Why speak now? I looked into the camera and took a breath that came from every ache I had ever swallowed. Because silence is the weapon they count on. And I've sharpened mine too long. I told everything. From the humiliation in the grocery store. To Karina's years of control. The hidden cameras. The forged documents. The abuse no one saw. The threat against my son. The women who came forward. The victims buried in paper trails. I told them about Marlene. About the network. About the files. About Lydia. They stole my sister, I said. They stole her freedom. They stole years from me. They erased a child I never knew existed. But they didn't win. And then I held up the flash drive. This contains names. Powerful ones. The people who helped them. Who profited from others' silence. This is no longer just my story. This is our country's shame. The video went live. Within 10 minutes, it had 500,000 views. A senator retweeted it. A retired judge commented, I saw this happen. I stayed quiet. Never again. That night, we returned to a secure facility. Lydia stayed in the guest suite. She didn't say much. Just held the blanket Shelby gave her and stared out the window like she was still trying to find herself beyond the broken edges. But I knew she would. We both would. At 2:14 a.m., a message came through Theo's system. Anonymous, but we knew who it was. Last chance. Delete the drive. Disappear. Or someone you love will. We didn't respond. We didn't have to. Because an hour later, the federal task force raided 3 properties linked to Marlene. By dawn, headlines read, nationwide arrest warrants issued in elder exploitation network. Orchestrator identified. And her name was no longer hidden. Marlene Ortiz. And beneath it, the woman who tried to erase Margaret Reed. But there was one thing left. One last move. One final confrontation. Because while the world was watching the headlines, Marlene was still free. And she had made one final mistake. She thought we'd stay in hiding. But I had just found my voice. And I had one more thing to say, to her. Face to face. If you've followed this story, if you've cried with me, hurt with me, stood in silence, and finally stood up, I want to ask something now. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel. But more importantly, tell me where you're from. Because I want to know how far a broken woman's voice can carry when it's no longer afraid. Now, let me tell you how it ends. It happened in a parking garage. Marlene didn't know we were there. She'd slipped out of one of her hideouts, hidden behind tinted windows, and a driver paid in cash. We intercepted the signal through a burner phone she forgot we'd cloned. And Theo knew she'd show up at the storage unit one last time. Desperate. Desperate people get sloppy. We waited. Not with guns. With cameras. Microphones. A hidden task force just out of frame. Lydia stood beside me, her hands trembling but steady in spirit. She wore the same coat she left in all those years ago, washed, restored, re-owned. Are you ready? I asked her. No, she said, but I'm going anyway. Marlene stepped out of the vehicle in heels far too confident for a woman with collapsing power. Her eyes flicked toward me and narrowed. So, she sneered, you couldn't just take your little moment of fame and fade quietly, could you? I didn't flinch. No. Because you took decades from me. From my sister. From hundreds of people who couldn't fight back. You think this circus ends me? She hissed. Do you know who I know? Everyone, I said. And now they know you too. I held up my phone. One button. Go live. Theo gave a nod. Lydia stepped forward. You lied to me, she said, voice shaking. You told me she died. You told me my son was safe. Your son was a pawn, Marlene spat. Both of them were. But at least I gave you purpose. You gave me a prison, Lydia replied. And I'm walking out of it. The stream went live. Viewers flooded in. Law enforcement stepped out of the shadows. Marlene Ortiz, the lead agent, said, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder exploitation, forgery, obstruction of justice, and human trafficking. She screamed as they pulled her hands behind her back. You're weak, Margaret. All of you. You'll be forgotten. But her voice was lost beneath the roar of the news feed, the flashing lights, the people tuning in from every city, every town, watching not a fall, but a rise. My rise. It's been 6 months now. The task force has grown into a national agency. They call it the Reed Act, passed unanimously, designed to prevent abuse of power of attorney, to protect the elderly and expose hidden abuse. I sit on the advisory board. Me. A woman once silenced in her own kitchen. Linda passed peacefully last month. She died knowing she'd been believed. That her pain hadn't been for nothing. Lydia is rebuilding. Slowly. Quietly. She speaks to youth groups now, teaches girls how to see the traps before they're in them. And the baby? The one we both thought we'd lost? His name is Elias. He's 48 now. A father. A teacher. We met last week. He said he always felt like something was missing. Now he knows. Now he has 2 mothers, one who bore him, and one who never stopped searching even when she didn't know what she'd lost. So if you're listening to this, if you're an older woman who's been told to stay quiet, to sit still, to not cause trouble, I need you to hear me. Your voice still matters. Your story still matters. And it's never too late to stand up and say, not anymore. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel. And tell me, where are you from? Because this story isn't just mine. It's ours. And we're just getting started.